The stage lights flickered as a middle-aged man in a worn-out janitor's uniform slowly walked out, clutching a mop in one hand. The audience murmured in confusion, some laughing quietly, unsure if it was a joke. His shoes squeaked softly against the stage floor as he made his way to the microphone. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised, exchanging puzzled glances with the other judges. "Are you here to perform?" he asked skeptically. The man nodded shyly, his voice barely above a whisper as he said, "Yes. I'd like to sing." The crowd went silent for a moment, curiosity replacing laughter. The man placed the mop gently on the side of the stage, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes. When the first note left his lips, the entire theater froze. His voice was deep, powerful, and filled with emotion, the kind of tone that carries years of struggle, loneliness, and hidden dreams. Every lyric seemed to tell a story of a man who had cleaned floors and emptied trash cans while secretly holding onto a voice the world had never heard. As he sang, the judges' expressions changed. Simon's skepticism softened into surprise. Sofia Vergara put her hand to her chest. The audience, once laughing, now sat in stunned silence, eyes locked on the man who was pouring his soul into every word. The song built toward a breathtaking climax, a note so strong and pure that the crowd erupted into cheers before he even finished. People stood up, clapping and shouting his name, overwhelmed by the beauty of his performance. When the final note faded, the man opened his eyes and looked out into the sea of faces, tears glistening under the spotlight. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. The camera caught Simon slowly rising from his seat, a small smile on his face, a rare gesture of genuine respect. That, Simon said softly, was absolutely incredible. The audience roared again, some chanting for the golden buzzer. The janitor covered his face with his hands, shaking from the emotion. As golden confetti began to fall, the moment felt magical, a reminder that true talent can come from the most unexpected places. The man who once cleaned the stage was now standing on it as a star, his dream no longer hidden in the shadows of a mop and bucket, but shining brightly in front of millions. A small boy, barely 12 years old, walked nervously onto the massive stage, clutching a worn violin case against his chest. His clothes were simple, his hair slightly messy, and his shoes scuffed, the kind of kid who didn't look like he belonged in front of thousands. The bright lights seemed almost too much for him as he stood there, trembling. Simon Cowell leaned forward, trying to catch the boy's quiet voice. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The boy stammered, I'm Liam," barely audible. "And what will you be doing for us tonight?" "I'll play the violin," he said, eyes cast downward. A ripple of polite applause filled the room. He opened the case slowly, his hands shaking, revealing an old violin with scratches and faded varnish. The crowd watched, unsure of what to expect. When he lifted the bow, the entire hall went silent. Then, with one long breath, he drew the bow across the strings, and the sound that came out silenced every whisper. It wasn't just music. It was emotion. The first few notes floated softly through the air, delicate and haunting. As the melody grew stronger, it carried something deeper, pain, hope, beauty, all mixed together. The boy closed his eyes, lost in his own world. His body swayed gently as his fingers danced with precision and grace. Every note seemed to tell a story of a child who had faced loneliness but found his voice through his instrument. The audience was transfixed, you could hear nothing but the music echoing across the room. Simon's eyes softened. Sofia covered her mouth, visibly moved. Heidi wiped a tear from her cheek. The music rose into a breathtaking crescendo that seemed to lift the entire audience with it, and when he played the final trembling note, silence fell again, heavier than before. Then came the explosion of applause. The crowd jumped to its feet, cheering wildly, shouting his name. The boy opened his eyes, stunned, as tears streamed down his cheeks. Simon smiled, leaning into his mic. "Liam," he said, his voice low but full of warmth, you didn't just play the violin, you spoke to us." The other judges nodded, still emotional. Then, without hesitation, Simon pressed the golden buzzer. The hall filled with golden confetti as the boy looked up, covering his face in disbelief. The crowd roared louder than ever. The shy kid who could barely speak had just touched the world with his music. The audience buzzed with quiet chatter as the next contestant shuffled onto the stage, a sweet-looking elderly woman with a bright floral dress, silver hair neatly tied back, and oversized glasses perched on her nose. She smiled warmly, waving to the judges with the gentle confidence of a grandmother greeting her family. "Hello, darling," Sophia said, grinning. "What's your name?" The woman chuckled softly. "You can call me Granny G," she replied, earning laughter from the crowd. Simon tilted his head, intrigued. "And what will you be doing for us today, Granny G?" She straightened her shoulders proudly and said, "I'll be rapping." The audience burst into laughter, even the judges couldn't hide their amusement. Simon raised his eyebrows, smirking. "Rapping?" he repeated, still skeptical. Granny G nodded firmly, her eyes twinkling. "Don't underestimate me, young man," she said with a wink. The crowd roared with laughter and applause as the music started, a strong hip-hop beat filling the hall. Then, to everyone's shock, Granny G grabbed the microphone and started rapping with unbelievable speed and rhythm. Her voice was powerful, confident, and full of attitude. The crowd's laughter turned into cheers. Every line she dropped carried humor, rhythm, and life lessons wrapped in witty rhymes. "I raised 6 kids and I still got flow, age is a number, now watch me go," she rapped, pointing toward the judges with swagger that made the whole room erupt. Simon's face went from disbelief to pure delight. He leaned back, laughing and clapping along with the beat. Heidi and Sophia were dancing in their chairs. Even Howie jumped up, hyping her like a true fan. The cameras panned over the crowd, hundreds of people on their feet, waving their hands, cheering for the rapping grandma who was owning the stage like a pro. As the song ended, Granny G struck a playful pose, tossing her mic gently into the air and catching it like a performer half her age. The audience exploded in applause, chanting her name. Simon stood up, shaking his head with a grin. "That," he said, laughing, "was the most unexpected performance of the night, and I absolutely loved it." Granny G wiped a tear of joy from her eye, overwhelmed by the standing ovation. The light sparkled around her as she smiled at the cheering crowd. In that moment, she wasn't just a grandmother, she was a star, proving that talent has no age limit and dreams never retire. The stage lights dimmed as 4 men walked out, their boots echoing softly on the floor. They wore dusty construction uniforms, helmets tucked under their arms, and faint traces of paint still on their sleeves. The audience murmured, thinking they might be part of a comedy act or some kind of prank. Simon leaned toward the other judges, clearly puzzled. "So, what are you guys doing for us today?" he asked. One of them, the tallest with a shy grin, stepped forward. "We're just friends from a construction site," he said, his voice modest. "We sing together during breaks. Thought we'd give this a try." The crowd chuckled lightly, not expecting much. The men exchanged nervous glances as the music cue failed to start. "No track?" Simon asked, "You're singing a cappella?" The leader nodded. "Yes, sir." Simon smiled faintly. "All right then, show us what you've got." The 4 took a deep breath, standing shoulder to shoulder, and began to sing, no instruments, no backing track, just their voices blending into perfect harmony. The first few notes stunned the room. Their voices carried warmth and unity, each tone layered perfectly over the other. It was a song about brotherhood and hard work, a melody born from long days under the sun and laughter shared on lunch breaks. Their harmonies filled the theater like a wave, smooth and powerful. The crowd, who moments ago expected to laugh, now stood in silence, spellbound. Simon's expression changed instantly. His arms, once crossed, dropped to the table. The judges leaned in closer, captivated. The singers' voices rose together in a soulful crescendo that echoed through the hall. The energy built until the audience couldn't hold back any longer. They stood up mid-performance, clapping and cheering, completely swept away. The four men, caught up in the moment, sang even harder, their emotion pouring out with every note. As the final harmony faded, the theater erupted in applause. The men looked at each other, stunned, barely believing what they had just done. Simon stood up, eyes bright with pride, and slammed the golden buzzer. Instantly, golden confetti rained from above, shimmering under the stage lights. The crowd roared as the four friends hugged tightly, tears streaming down their faces. For a group of humble construction workers who once sang only to pass time, this moment was life-changing. The same voices that echoed across dusty worksites now filled one of the biggest stages in the world. Dreams that once felt far away were suddenly real, and their harmony would be remembered forever.